About 24 years ago, I was turning 50, and I was living in a big monastery in England, Amaravati. I'd been a nun for quite a number of years, and I wanted to do something special to mark this new decade of my life. 50. In the Buddhist scriptures, this 50 decade is called the 10 years, the wisdom years. Just to give you encouragement, this is the wisdom decade. I didn't feel very wise then, but there was a stupa which doesn't exist now. It's been redone. But in those days, the stupa that was there looked like a birthday cake. It had many concentric circles of a stucco material painted white with 4 arches, one on east, south, northwest. Each direction had a Buddha image in it. It was a very beautiful stupa to circumambulate. So I hatched a scheme during the weeks preceding this retreat that I was given the opportunity to do as part of my turning 50. I was be alone on retreat in a kuti. I collected 51 jars over weeks in the kitchen. Every time a peanut butter was finished, I'd get the jar out of recycling, etc. And I hid them, I don't remember where, because I didn't want anyone to know. I had a plan. I wanted to do something special and surprise everyone in the community. So then I collected 51 tea lights. As an alms mendicant, these were not easy things to do, because we didn't have anything. And it would be very strange for me to be collecting all these things without explaining what I was up to. And then I got hold of some matches, and on the night of my 50th birthday, when the whole community was in the meditation hall meditating, I got my bag of jars and tea lights, a separate bag, and I went out to this large stupa with its many layers of this stucco material, like the layers of a cake. I placed the 51 jars on each layer, going round and round, with one jar at the very top as the good luck candle. And in each jar I placed a tea light. And then I got my little box of matches, and I started walking around the stupa, circumambulating, and every time I came to a jar, I would light the tea light, and I would think of someone in my life, and I would chant and dedicate the merits of my life to that person. So it wasn't difficult for me to come up with 51 names. My parents, of course, tops, but then I think I did them at the end as the good luck on top, together. So I walked around the stupa step by step, chanting, and each time I would come to a jar, I would light the light, and I'd be chanting the Metta Sutta in Pali. And I noticed a few times I would think of someone and name them and light the light, and it wouldn't light. And this was a little sign to me that something wasn't right. And in my heart I knew that I held something about that person. I was not holding it well. And so I would stand there and keep chanting to that person until I could light the light. And even though I don't think that would necessarily resolve whatever it was a tremendous teaching for me, because it wasn't just one. There were a few lights, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10 beings that I brought up in my mind and tried to send metta to, and I could not light the light. I tell you this because I think this is a very valuable exercise. I think all of us have lived long enough and have gone through enough in our lives to have struggled with at least one person. And maybe that struggle doesn't exist anymore, but in case it does, it's good for us to do something similar, is to try to practice this metta pervasion or metta radiation towards different beings in our lives, and remember them individually, and try to light the light, a metta light, a loving light for that person within our own hearts. We don't have to do it physically with candles and tea lights, or jars and tea lights outdoors on a stupa. That would be difficult to replicate. But just sitting in the meditation hall and bringing up in your mind, you could say, let me, however old you are, let me remember 35 people, 40 people, or something like that. And see how well you do with each one. Is there a stumbling? Is there hesitation? What are we holding? What's wrong in there? How can we resolve it? How can we let it go? If we don't let it go, probably we'll die with that. It's good to clear everything before we die. Otherwise, we may have some karmic connection to that person in a future life, and we may have to start all over again. So it's a very worthwhile karmic purification, reconciliation. Even our own land, our own country, Canada and the US, many countries have unresolved stuff, unresolved wrongs done to citizens, to beings, to landsmen of these countries. And those wrongs have not been completely rectified. Some efforts are being made. But how valuable this reconciliation is. Just to wind up that little story, when I finished the 51 lights, I was ecstatic. I was overjoyed. I was overflowing with joy and celebration of all this friendship and support that I'd received from these many beings, and more that were unnamed. And then I went back to my kuti and watched. At the end of the puja, many of the monks and nuns came out of the temple, and they saw that the stupa was alight. But they didn't know how that had happened. Nobody knew what had happened. But they all walked out to the field and looked at the stupa. I watched them in the distance, giggling. And they were all looking at these lights, like, wow, where did this come from? Maybe some figured it out. I don't know, but it was such a joy for me to see that. Some of them walked around, circumambulated, and some just shook their heads and went back, kind of puzzled. It was a wonderful memory to think how much my joy could be spread like that in a mysterious and light-hearted way to everyone in the community. And it was a beautiful night, so the light that we light through our joy, we really don't understand how much it radiates, how much it can pervade and affect other people in a good way. So it's really important for us to do this inner cleansing time and again, even every day. If something has happened during the day, we didn't speak to someone as kindly as we would have liked, then we can practice this. It's a forgiveness. You can call it metta, but what it requires is reconciliation. And that's the work that we have to do within us. Even if we don't meet that person again, but if we can reconcile with them within us and truly light a light in their honor as a memorial, a remembrance, that there's a good feeling there, and we learned something from it. It could even be a child. It could be somebody that we may never see again. But just in case, and actually to cure ourselves of any residue of poison, any hard feeling should be resolved, should be melted. And we melt these things through the flame, through the luminosity of forgiveness, which is a very potent mind state. It requires humility. It requires some courage to go back over a difficult encounter and take responsibility for it, even if we feel totally vindicated. I didn't do anything wrong. That's not the point. The point is that some harm may have been caused, and by resolving in this way, we can clear that harm and karmically, completely reconcile it. And then the next time we meet that person, we can see them with goodwill. There won't be a flutter in the heart. There won't be a tremor. There won't be a hesitation. We will welcome them fully. Hello. They might be surprised. What's wrong with, well, what's going on? But let them be pleasantly surprised, and let that goodwill be contagious. We know how contagious hatred is. We see it all the time. It's worse than gossip because it is so destructive. Bad speech is also destructive. But hardened views that are critical harden our hearts and create walls between people. Sometimes they last for generations. I know from my own life, having the memory of somebody that wasn't kind to my mother, I used to feel quite bitter towards that person. But by applying this principle of forgiveness, I began to soften and forgive. So it's quite a generous offering, forgiving ourselves. Let us take some time together to do this practice. We've done the metta bhavana, and this is very similar. It's a little bit different. We start by forgiving ourselves. So bringing up a quality of metta, loving kindness, and karuna, compassion. This loving kindness and compassion, they are so deeply intertwined. With metta, we wish for the well-being of ourselves or another. With compassion, we wish for the well-being, but more to the point, we wish for them to be free from pain, free from suffering, free from harm. Because compassion acknowledges the suffering and wishes for it to be resolved, subdued, transformed. So may I be well and happy and peaceful. May I also overcome all hostility, all negativity in the heart. May I be forgiven for any harm that I may have caused in any direction. May I forgive myself for any words or deeds that have come through me to myself or to another. May I be courageous enough to bear the consequences of any harm I have caused without bitterness, without ill will towards those who cannot yet forgive me. May this be possible. May I be kind and forgiving to all who bear ill will towards me. Even at a distance, may I be wise in choosing whether to meet with them or not. May I be strong in the Buddha's dispensation. May I know the ways of forgiveness and kindness constantly, not to fall into the trap of bearing ill will. May I be discerning and mindful of that danger. May the metta in my heart grow and expand year by year. May kindness be my instinct to respond, even in the face of cruelty or disdain dishonor or hate. May I bear no grudge and reap the fruits of my own karmic deeds. May my life be a gift of forgiveness, generosity, patient, loving kindness, compassion of extraordinary degree. May all beings with no feet do me no harm. May all beings with 2 feet do me no harm. May all beings with many feet do me no harm. May all beings with no feet receive my love. May all beings with 2 feet receive my love. May all beings with many feet receive my love. Through the power of my noble intentions, may no harm come to all beings. Through the power of forgiveness, may all beings overcome all hostility. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful, free from pain, free from suffering, free from harm. May all beings know loving kindness and compassion